Welcome to another episode of What Are You Reading? What Are You Writing? I'm Karen E. Osborne, author of Getting It Right and my upcoming novel, Tangled Lies, which launches on July 22nd. And today, I'm getting to speak with, this is all about me today. I'm getting to speak to one of my favorite writers. She has written two beautifully written historical novels. The first one she wrote under her previous name, Stacia Brown, and it's called Accidents of Providence. And it's available still, even though it's been out a long time. It was in Oprah's magazine, and it's just a wonderful book. And the second one is also available. It's called The Half Wives, and it's under the name Stacia Pelletier. Welcome, Stacia.
Thank you. I am delighted to be here, Karen. It's an honor.
I'm so glad you're here. So we're going to do things a little differently today. Stacia and I had a chance to chat earlier this week, and this has been a rough week. And we tried to decide, should we cancel or should we, soldier through? And I thought, all of us are being affected in one way or another by loss, by anxiety. And so we're just gonna roll with it. And we're gonna start with Stacia just telling us a little bit about what's going on with her and how that's affecting her writing and her reading and her life.
Sure. Thank you, Karen. And thanks for your flexibility too. As I emailed you first saying, I don't think I can do this, and then emailing you back and saying, actually, maybe I can do this. Maybe I want to. So I've been known to change my mind on more than one occasion. Basically, for folks who are listening, I'm a huge dog lover, as I'm sure many other writers and readers are. And about a week ago, we had a medical emergency with our beloved border collie rescue, Scout. I spent about a week trying to manage his pain and trying to make a determination with the vets if we could save him, if we could get him into surgery. And long story short, we wound up having to euthanize him on Saturday, about 6 days ago now. And I have been a big bawling baby ever since. Since we've all been through the pandemic, we've been pretty isolated, and Scout was basically my constant, and other than my husband and stepdaughters, pretty much my only companion for almost a year. He sat with me here in my study where I do my writing. I would take him on long hikes and walks. So pretty much everything reminds me of him. So it's been a rough week. And I guess I would say I was already in a transition phase with my own creative writing. I have a novel that I've recently finished that's currently sort of under preliminary review by one of the gatekeepers, as we always think of them. So I was thinking about my next project and trying to sort of start doing some jotting of ideas and everything else, but that I've not been able to pick up a pen since Scout died. So I guess, some of it is just navigating. Normally, when something bad happens in my life or something hard happens in my life, sometimes I find refuge in the fact that I'm working on a novel. I can go throw myself into that and kind of disappear for a while. But this one caught me in between projects. So right now, I'll be perfectly honest, I have not a creative sentence in me. I think I need to get a little bit farther past this before I can see to the next book project. And that's a hard space for me to be in, because I feel constantly like I'm wasting every moment of my time if I'm not actively working on something at least a couple hours a day. So I have to be kind of gentle with myself here and give myself that space.
That's such a good message, though, to be gentle with ourselves and give ourselves that space. That's a powerful message. So many are struggling. So many have hit all kinds of roadblocks, and sometimes the roadblocks are, big, like losing Scout, and sometimes the roadblocks are bigger, like losing a loved one, and sometimes they're just small, but still like pow, and that's all those darn rejection letters. When you send something out into the world and somebody didn't love it. So I think being gentle with yourself and giving yourself some space is a wonderful message. Can you tell our audience a little bit about your creative journey? How did you come from? I know that you were a phenomenal fundraiser, a really expert at fundraising. That's how we met.
Mhm.
And how did that person become this amazing historical novel writer?
Well, how long do you have, Karen? Because that's um,
The
first, thank you.
highlights.
I never felt like I always felt a little bit like an imposter with my fundraising career, but I think that's something that many people experience when they're doing something new. And I still sometimes feel like an imposter with my writing, so I think that's also a shared experience. But basically, from a very early age, I've known that I loved reading and wanted to write, but I wasn't sure what kind of writing would be the best fit for me. So I did I did graduate school, didn't study creative writing. I studied history and religion. And it wasn't until I was basically done with grad school that I was so tired of kind of writing traditional papers and theses that I said to myself, screw this, I'm going to write a novel and just see if I can do it. And it turned out that I really loved the sort of the freedom that comes with fiction, where you can sort of, you can invent your own story and follow
Make
your
up stuff.
imagination. Exactly. So that became my great obsession and passion. And ever since then, so basically the last, 10 to 15 years, I have taken whatever day job I need to take that helps me make a living and gives me ideally enough sort of space, mental space, that I still have some time to carve out for my own creative work. I'm not yet, and may not ever be, I don't know. I'm not yet one of these people who can make a living entirely from her own creative writing. So I've always had to find ways to balance. Am I going to have a fundraising job? Am I going to be a speechwriter or a program administrator? And I think that's actually good for many people, although it's tiring. I mean, I think that maybe I'm justifying it here, but I do think that if I had independent wealth and I could just sit there and write my novels all day long, writing a novel, as everybody knows, is such an interior process. It's so inward facing, and I'm already tend to be fairly introspective and introverted. I'm afraid I would turn inward so much I would forget to lose touch with the people and the stories and the lives of the world around me that is the reason why we write. So I'm grateful for the fact that I've had to earn a living alongside, because it's sort of kept me with one foot in the real world and the experiences of people that I want to sort of incorporate into my understanding of why we're here and what stories matter. So I'm no longer a fundraiser anymore. I've sort of journeyed through different iterations, but I'm still doing a day job. It's just a different one now.
Yeah. And am I remembering this correctly, that you're also teaching writing now?
I have been. I'm not at the moment. The pandemic sort of put a hold on what I was doing, but I was teaching for adult learners, which I actually love. I was teaching in a continuing ed program up here in North Georgia for just, regular working men and women, retirees who've got a book inside them that needs to come out. So it brings me great joy to work with individuals who aren't necessarily the next great MFA grad, but who just, one woman, I just got a note from her last week. She was a trucker her whole life, like really interesting, difficult life she has lived. And she wanted to write a novel about it. So I encouraged her, provided what coaching I could. And she has gone ahead. She's self-published it. She's put it on Amazon, and she's put together t-shirts to go along with it. So all of her friends and the people from her church are helping her sell it. And she is so excited, and I'm so excited for her that I was able to help her sort of bring a story to life. So when I do teach, I prefer to teach, adult learners. I think they're just fantastic.
Yeah, that's a great story. She produced T-shirts
Yes,
with her book. I love
just
that.
keep on trucking on the back, and then it has her book link.
That is awesome. That is awesome. I was speaking to my oldest grandson, JP. He's 14, and
Mhm.
he's written two novels. And
Good for him.
so I did an interview with him, and I was talking to the 9-year-old, and I said, I'd love to do an interview with you too, because you read so many books and you could recommend books. And he said, Grammy, I have to write my book first. I don't think I'm ready for your show yet until I write my book. Okay, okay. So
Smart boy.
speaking about reading, can
Yeah.
you recommend some books that you recently read, or that doesn't have to be like recent, but
Mhm.
sometime during this pandemic that you just really loved, and just tell us a little bit about it.
Sure. Yeah, I thought about this in the last couple of days. I sort of have two answers, and they're quite on opposite ends of the spectrum in some ways. But so in the crisis of the last week and a half, I have kept reading because although sometimes it's hard to concentrate, but I have discovered about myself that if things are really difficult, I go to my comfort books. I don't, I set
Mhm.
aside the demanding difficult ones that are going to make me a better person. And so I've been reading, I've been rereading old Ann Tyler novels. Um,
Mm,
she's one of my longtime sort of favorite, comfortable writers. And I say that as a compliment, like, you love all of her characters. Accidental Tourist is one of my longtime favorites.
yes.
So I reread that while I was staying up late at night with Scout because she imbues her characters with, even though they're dreadfully imperfect, you love them all because she loves them, and there's something that's really graceful about that. So I've been rereading Ann Tyler during this sad period. Before everything happened, I had recently finished. I'm a little late to the game on this one, but I had recently finished George Saunders' novel Lincoln in the Bardo,
Hmm.
which
Wow.
um, it was came out about 3 years ago, and he was I had not read anything else by him. He was a short story writer for many years, but this book landed in it. I think it won the Booker Prize, but it's an experimental novel, basically that takes place over one night after President Lincoln's young son Willie dies, which did happen historically, and it's an exploration of sort of what happens in that intermediary space between life and death, taking place in the graveyard where the president's son is. And I can't do justice to how he writes the story, except to say that I found it shocking in what he was able to do with the novel. He has kind of a chorus of voices that come through, and at first I found it very confusing, and then it felt almost more like a hymn. And since I grew up in the church, sort of there was something very I don't know, just something very theological about the way he put together this portrait of a father grieving a child. So books like that I can't read during difficult times, but when times are good and I'm looking to be stretched, Lincoln in the Bardo was pretty amazing. I would recommend it to anybody.
Great. That sounds really really interesting. And I am also an Ann Taylor fan, so I will add to Stacey's recommendation. Those are great books, comfort books. And you said that you
Yeah.
were, I know you're between projects, but
Mhm.
you've got something that's out there in the world
Mhm.
that's getting. So do you want to just take a minute and tell us a little bit about that latest project?
Sure. I- I'll couch it in very general terms because I'll say I'm embarrassed to admit this, but I'm a little bit suspicious. Well, anything I have is under the eyes of the gatekeepers. I get very suspicious about saying too much about it because I'm afraid I'm going to jinx it. Now that being said, I can say that although my first two novels were historical fiction, this novel is it's set in the present day, which is so it's a departure from me. It's more of a kind of straight up women's slash literary fiction. It's set in the South because I've been living in the South for the last 25 years, set in the mountains of North Georgia. And it's basically exploring a woman's relationship when she is in a long-term partnership with a man who turns out to be kind of a master manipulator and a bit of a gaslighter. And she's been with him for a long time. And as she comes to her realization, it's basically an exploration of her struggle with herself to figure out A, why she said yes in the first place, and then B, why she kept saying yes over the years as she sort of realized she should get out. And then C, what does she do now? Because although he's not good for her, she loves him and they've built up a history together now. So it's a story about a relationship. So I would call it a love story, but kind of a difficult one. So that's what I've written. And I will say for all the readers who are out there too, that it's, for me, I do also find it hard when I know something is being evaluated. I find it hard to be creative and start my next project because I'm so worried about what's happening to the last one. So that's an uncomfortable space to be in, as I suspect you know too.
Yes, it's very hard when you're wrapped up. And then when after someone says yes, and you know it's going to be published, then you can turn your
Yes.
energies. And I would just say that, a woman, a strong and complicated and flawed woman dealing with difficult relationships sounds very reminiscent of both of your other two novels. They were such unique and interesting women, and they were love stories, but not in any traditional kind of way. Does that sound fair? Fair description of the other two?
It is. Yeah, I find, I think we, as writers, we wind up circling around key questions that we ask over and over again in our novels. So even though our novels become very different, and I take comfort from like reading Ann Tyler, she has some of the same questions that she asked in different ways over and over again. So I don't take that to mean that we're just stuck in a rut and we can't write anything else. At least I hope not. I take it to mean that these are universal in some ways or shared human concerns, and it can take a lifetime to really get at what is the story I really need to be telling here. I still don't think I've got it, to be honest. I'm still not sure I'm telling it exactly the way it needs to come out. Maybe if we finally ever tell it the way it needs to come out, then we don't have to keep writing it. I don't know.
I don't know either, because I keep writing about the same things as well, even though the stories are very, very different. Well, Stacia, this has just been a wonderful conversation, and I thank you so much for, during this difficult week, still being willing to share with our audience. If they wanted to find out more about your books or be in touch with you, what would be the best way?
You can email me through my website, which is Stacia Pelletier or Pelletier.com. Or you can find me on Facebook, where I hang out the most. I think it's just under my name. I'm also on Twitter, but I'm terrible at Twitter. All I do is take peeks at other people, and I'm too nervous and shy to actually do much tweeting myself. But I am there if you want to follow me, so at least I know who you are.
And could you spell your last name for everyone?
Sure. It's Pelletier.
Yes. And you pronounced it. So the second way you pronounced it is the French way?
Yes, I'm still learning this. This is the story about when you get married late in life and you decide to change your name, a whole host of other complications come across. But yes, the Americanized version is Pelletier. The original sort of French Canadian, which is where my husband's ancestors are from, that version is Pelletier. But I feel a little pretentious calling myself Stacia Pelletier, but it's kind of nice. So I don't know.
It is. It's lovely. It's lovely. I thank you all for listening. As you can find me at KarenEOsborne.com, and my Facebook page is Karen E. Osborne Author. Thank you for watching and listening.